Welcome back to the Vantage Point, where you never know what we're going to talk about. But this week, we're continuing with last week's topic, which was to tell or not to tell. But this time, we're going to talk about when it comes to people's children. This one is a little personal to me because I'm always in a position where I have to decide to tell or not to tell as a youth pastor. And so I think it'll be very interesting to hear what you all have to say. There are a lot of scenarios where a youth may confide in you, whether it's they're pregnant, they're homosexual, they've been abused, but it's in the past. Now, if it's currently happening, that's not. I do tell that, but there's a lot of scenarios where you have to decide whether to tell or not to tell. I know Jess was bringing up a story of how she shared some information once. When do you think, or how do you think, should parents know everything about their kids? And should somebody tell them? Like me, should I tell if I know your child has been abused?
You answer that question. What you think?
Who, me? Okay, first of all, she squared up on me a little bit.
No, I'm being so serious.
Okay, my immediate thoughts are, if it's not currently happening, I don't tell it. If it is currently happening, that's different because the parent can step in and intervene. But if there's nothing they can do at this point, then I won't break the child's confidence when they're just getting to a place where they talk about it. I do try to get the child to say it to their parent. I do. I encourage that as they talk more. But rather than rushing them into that, because now you got to deal with mom and dad's emotions too. Or whoever, cousins, or especially if the family, oh gosh, the story can just get so much worse. Rather than rushing them into that, I try to guide them into that, but I don't force them to tell, and I don't tell. And I've told them that, like, I'm dealing with the abuse scenario right now. This is the abuse one. But I've told them that I will not tell anything that I don't tell them first. I won't catch them off guard. Because I feel like if they're that vulnerable at that moment, I should not abuse that. But that has put me in some jacked up positions. I'm not even gonna lie, where parents were ticked and everything, but I stand by it as the decision I'm gonna continue to make. Because I think they need a safe place, and if you can't fix it, because it's over, right? It's usually when they start talking. By the time they start talking, it's been years. It's been years. They're not even in danger. And I asked that, do you still see this person? It's not even that kind of scenario. Usually it's something that happened when they're 4, 5, 6, 7, and they're not talking about it until they're teenagers. So do I run out and tell? No. Because I've seen parents do really well with that and help, and I've seen some parents who were straight up disasters and made it all about them, or made a family mess that now the kid has to pile on to something they're just now ready to confront. And so no, like I said, yes, it's gotten me in a couple of uncomfortable positions, but I'll do it again.
Okay, let's talk about that. So we just talked about in our last show about if you're somebody that's friends with somebody, you know what I mean, like you're close with them. So what if it was your friend's child? Would you tell your friend at that point?
No.
You still wouldn't break that confidence?
There's nobody. And I've been tested on this across the board. There's literally nobody. I won't break their confidence. In fact, I feel like it's even more important if it's my friends or family, because they may have less people to talk to. They look at me and they go, oh, that's my mom's best friend, or that's somebody who's grown up with my parent, or whatever is the scenario. So no, when they're finally ready to say something, no, I will not. And I don't care who the parent is.
Wow. That's a hard pill to swallow.
It is.
Anybody else got something?
That's it.
Well, I think when you're talking about children, particularly if you have them, this is already a touchy subject.
Yeah.
Because no parent wants to be blindsided by something that their kids have experienced, be it abuse, be it anything. But I think when you are in the role of minister, in the role of, I'll move away from the kids and then come back to that. There's been times where another woman has shared something with me, and I'm like, hey, I can't be the final stop for this information. Now, I'm not going to go tell your information, depending on what it is. You know, there's been times where I'll say, hey, you got 24 hours to reach out to leadership to say, hey, we need to talk. And to keep my promise about what was told or what have you, I said, and here's what my check is going to be. I'm just going to say, hey, you got an appointment? Depending on what the nature of it is. But legally, spiritually, I think we have to be careful. Now, there's a certain level of pride and embarrassment when it comes to your kids, because you're like, well, when did that happen? Well, how do I not know that? Why did they tell you that? Why didn't they tell me that? You got to go through all that first, and then with the help of God, He gets you to the point to where, are they okay? Are they getting the help that they need? But it takes time to get there, you know, because again, you just gave me, I just learned of trauma that has taken place in my child's life, and in talking to them, they said, yeah, well, I told so-and-so. My initial response, yeah, well, why didn't they tell me? That as a parent, that I don't care if you're close or far, but again, it does matter to me who it is that they talk to. But I think if we're being honest, and to the other women out there, it takes time to process trauma. You know, whether they told you, whether you found out, whether a youth leader, I don't think there's one answer to that to say, well, when that happens, this is how you do that. Because how Jennifer might respond may be totally different than how I respond. Maybe you told me something about an adult sister. I was able to be like, oh, okay. But my child, and again, I'm not a youth leader. From the outside looking in, I could see the trauma. I could see the fight that comes with that, because I'm wondering why my child is flipping out, and you know why. But you're not telling me why. I've got major problems with that. But again, when stuff happens outside of your control, you do not get to control the response. I don't get to control who my kids tell or who they told. And that's why I'm saying I'm so glad that God is with us, because some things that your children will tell you even as they get older. And I remember God, I was on my way out of town, and I was sitting in the back seat, and this court scene had came on, and the nature of it was just like, oh, that's terrible. And I remember God saying, you're gonna have to deal with that. Well, when? What? I'm so grateful it was God, because if God brings it to me, okay, God, this didn't catch you by surprise. There's a certain level of comfort that you're gonna get. You're gonna walk me through this. But again, like we said in the other show, when you become the source that gave me this pain, I gotta process you. I gotta process what happened. I gotta process recover. And to Takoya's point, I think when children start to talk, normally it is, unfortunately, it's years later. And they've had 15, maybe 20 years to deal with what they're about to tell you that's fresh to you, you know? And I think from a ministry standpoint, you have to decide, man, if I give this information to this parent right now, can they handle this? Now, again, it's gonna sound like I have a double standard here, but it's just the dynamics of the scenario and how I'm wired. The flip side to that is, who gives you control over my life and things that affect my life? Who told you you had a right to keep that to yourself? Mm-hmm. You know, that was my thought on the previous show where we were talking about the marital situation. Who told you y'all deserve to keep that secret? He's not married to you. He's married to me. That's not a secret that you keep, in my opinion. Was it wisdom? You know, but again, who gives you that right to withhold that information from me? Because if it does come out, again, I'm mad, I'm ticked. You knew all this time, and when you've been through some traumatic experiences in that nature, your children or your marriage, you don't get more personal than that. That is like your core. So if I'm years later, you knew this, you knew that, oh man, that whole experience to me is compounded. And that's why I'm saying you better have a conversation with God on what do I do with this information. Because, you know, I'll jump to this. I was so glad when I was making the decision to go through divorce or not go through divorce that nobody told me to. because had they told me to, the nights it was hard, the nights it was lonely, the days, the months, the years, the crying, rolling on the floor, counting it's been 52 Sundays, it's been, I would have been able to look at somebody and say, and you know how we do, well, you happy, you sitting over there happy, while I'm over here hurting, and you told me to leave my husband,
Baby.
So I totally get why we couldn't say that, but that doesn't take away the side effects of not being told.
I agree with that. I think that sometimes, especially with the young people, and this is unfortunately so frequent. If we're just talking about abuse, pregnancy is actually a lot easier, because every time they tell me, I'm like, baby, that's not a secret, right?
Right. It's gonna happen.
This is not.
They're gonna show up with a kid.
I'll go with you to tell them.
Right.
But this is not an actual secret. So, they always, every instance they've told, abuse is different. Past abuse is different, because I have to look at it. I look at it as a parent too. I am a parent. I have 3 kids. The ideal that, gosh, somebody would know something and I'd hear about it later rips my heart out. The only thing that helps me with that is I would want them to trust the right people.
Yeah.
And if I break their confidence, I'm off the trust list. And so they can go talk to a school counselor now, and they'll never tell you.
Yep.
They're not going to watch their backs. They're not going to drop a hint. They're not going to check with them every week. They're not going to do it. They're not going to pray them through it. They can go talk to whomever they want, and they cannot tell you. So I don't want to be off that safe list. But I do always encourage them to tell. Some I've said, I'll go with you. Some have told, and some honestly have not, or they're working towards it. But that's not a fun. Yeah, I totally get why people would sit there and be like, "You didn't tell me." I understand. I do. It trust me, my seat doesn't feel much better. I don't want to. Let's just put it this way. I don't want to be here either. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be in this conversation.
Right.
I had to make a judgment. What is best for this child right now? If their parent can't know.
Yeah.
And their parent could know, but then that's a toss-up, and we have all the parents' emotions. And sometimes the kids just cannot handle that in that moment. They can't.
Right.
They just can't. And it's just, my gosh. And it looks like we have spent quite a bit of time on this already. I can't believe this conversation is going this fast, but we'll be right back. In just a minute, we're talking about to tell or not to tell. Join us in just a moment. Did you know that when you are quiet, your voice is missing to God's ears? I know some of us have prayed and we're wondering, how long should I pray about this? Why should I pray if God already knows? How will I know God is answering? And what do I do when I feel like God's not listening? But God is listening for your voice. It's too quiet in this world for the troubles we have. You have to raise your voice, and God wants to hear from you. It's Too Quiet, a book about prayer, is designed to answer your prayer questions and build your faith. Visit presstopray.com.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
Because of you, I felt hopeless.
I know it was a joke, but it still hurt me.
Because of you, I felt
Wanted and not alone in this world.
Because you said hi to me on the first day of school, I felt included, and I knew that I was going to be okay.
If you love them enough to crawl into a play place to get them to come down, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Welcome back to The Vantage Point, and we're here talking about to tell or not to tell. And right now we've been talking about our children and wanting to know, should somebody tell us, like a me, a youth pastor, if they know something about our child that is traumatic or a big deal, that their child confided in them. So I know Jenny was saying when we went off camera, you're conflicted about this. Go for it.
I am, because, you know, I've got grown kids now, so of course all kinds of things come out, you know, but I've never had an issue with my kids talking to other people as long as I trusted those people. Like, my kids have talked to Takoya, Sister Harris. I'd have no issues with any of that, because I feel like, you know, if they trust them, I trust them. I know that if they tell them that, they are actually praying for them, right? Got a whole issue with the whole school counselor business. But I also, you know, my kids, they talk to us differently. So I've got my husband, who is the master communicator. And so they will tell him stuff that they wouldn't tell me. And I'm grateful for that, because I get to freak out with Wayne when he tells me. And he's told me some things, and I get to have the whole, because I know my kids can't handle my emotions, so I don't give them those. So I think you knowing yourself as a parent is important. I know when I can handle certain conversations. I personally like having a conversation when I already know this information. Yeah. Personally, I work better that way. And so I do get the opportunity, and not many do get that opportunity, but I get the opportunity to process and temper my response when he comes to tell me something that he knows I need to know. But he always, you know, looks at me and, JR, you know, this is what, you know. And so I get to manage me. And I appreciate that, because I don't want to hurt them further, right? And I think as a parent, you have to understand that the reason they didn't tell you from jump is because they knew it would hurt you. They knew you would blame yourself. They knew, and they were protecting you by not giving. And so for me, as having adult children, I see that now. I can't say that when they were younger that I would feel that way. So that's one part of it. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to temper my responses, because it's so important. You know, as a child of abuse or who's been abused, I could never tell my parents that. To this day, have never told them any of that. And because I already, you know. But as an adult, you know, you learn how to process through that. And God has a huge, you know, ability to help you through whatever trauma you go through in your life. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe that you as a parent are owed any of that. I don't feel like you're owed that. I feel like your children have their life. Mm-hmm. They have their own experiences, and they have to find God for themselves. And as long as they can find God in this trauma, if that is where whoever they're talking to is leading them to, I'm okay with that. It's the destructive behavior that now I'm, as a parent, going to God, asking God, what's going on? Yeah. And when he tells me, I can temper my response, right? So I think as a parent, you gotta know you. Yeah. And you can't freak out every time, you know, because then that, in their mind, that's what you're gonna do. And that's why they don't tell you. And so if because I'm prone to be emotional, they will go right to their dad and say, Daddy, I need you to tell Mama such and such. And he just knows how to communicate with me, and so that I can hear. And, you know, so, you know, but I totally agree with your position. I wouldn't want you to violate that kind of trust at all, because I'm sure my kids have shared all kind of nonsense with you at some point. But
may I play the devil's advocate?
Sure.
Or may I just speak my piece?
Speak your piece.
And I'm just being totally honest.
That's okay.
I don't agree with that, because to me, like we were talking about, you took my right away. Like, because my thing is, I'm gonna hurt either way. Whether you tell me today or whether I find out a year from now, it's still gonna hurt me, because that's my child, right? And I wanna give the definition of deceitfulness. It is to withhold information. I know this, the only reason I know is because I was I was an insured life health and accident when I had to have all them licenses and investment stuff when I was an investment banker. But deceitfulness means to withhold information that, if otherwise known, it would alter one's decision. And I think this is the perfect scenario for that, because my decision on how I interact with this person or child is being altered because
How you interact with your child?
Well, whatever. I'm just talking.
No, that details matter.
No, I understand what I'm saying. I understand what I'm saying. I think that if my child was molested, I don't care if it was yesterday or 5 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I need to know that. Well, why do you need to know it? What is it going to change about your life? You didn't know it now, so what? All of the scenarios we can play out. I think that that's information that should be told. Now, if they come to you and say, I had sex with the same sex, or I mean, there's certain things that I can understand you keeping, and I don't want to just put on Sequoia, I don't want to just be like Sequoia. No, but I don't want to do that. I'm just saying, as my friend, whatever, I still would want to know certain things. I would, because if we're really friends, you should be able to tell me stuff like that. Now, because I'm gonna listen, they'll know not gonna come tell Auntie Jessica, because I'm gonna let your mama and them know.
I would never tell you.
I'm gonna let your mama and them know. Now, I'm not gonna tell you nothing about your husband, because that ain't none of my business. I don't get in covenant. But this is my child. You understand what I'm saying? Because I was telling you guys about what somebody told me. The only reason I didn't personally tell them, and I sent it anonymously, is because the person who confided in me, that could ruin their relationship with that. So I had to really play out this situation in my head. But you need to know if somebody messing with your son.
Messing with or messed with? See,
I mean, molesting.
Those are two different things.
Or it has happened. I don't know if it's on a daily basis, but if it has happened in the past, you need to know that.
And it's not that I don't want parents to know. Trust me, it's not.
Yeah.
But like you said, you'll hurt either way. See, you kind of made my point. You'll hurt either way. So I gotta wait for the kid to be ready to handle your hurt. And that's all I'm doing.
Now, are we talking about adult children or children that are
Well, I deal with young people who are usually 6th grade and up. So, so it's not always adults.
So
some of them are older teenagers.
Okay, then let me ask you a question.
And they mostly start talking when they're older teenagers. So every now and then you'll get a younger teenager who's ready to talk. But usually it's not till about 15, 16, 17 they start telling you what actually happened.
I'm confused. I really am. I'm being honest. I'm saying, if they're a minor and they come and disclose that type of information.
Legally, I'm not obligated to tell you.
I know you're not. Okay. That's all I needed to hear then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because I'm a minister and because just like a counselor, they would not tell you.
They wouldn't.
They would not tell you a single thing. What I do differently is I try to get them to tell. I do. I always encourage them to tell.
Well, and I would want
you
to
to
do
go
that
with them
before they get up and tell the whole church.
Oh no! Now I banned that. I've learned to screen testimonies.
The entire world.
I've learned to screen testimonies. I have, because I've had one young person do that. Got up and testified about being abused, and their parent learned about it in the testimony service. That is not cool.
That's not okay.
But
girl, my heart over here fluttering right now.
But like you said, that you're gonna hurt either way.
Yes.
The thing is, now they're just rawly first saying it out loud, and like I think to Jenny's point, she said there's some things I never said. I just keep, because I'm not going to tell anybody. If I take away the one place they're willing to tell, then what?
But let me ask you.
Then what with what's next? Or if it's deeper than what they told me. Or if there's more to it or more layers. You'll never get to, I'll never get to help them.
I respectfully
and they didn't
disagree.
want to tell you.
Right, I respectfully disagree. Because if they're a minor still, then that means there's some legal, we're talking about abuse.
If it's currently happening, there is some legal
If it's currently happening, and I said currently, I do tell. I said if it's happening, I tell, hands down, because the parent can step in and stop.
No, but even if it wasn't current.
But if it's 10 years ago, and it's somebody they don't see anymore, because I ask all these questions. I don't just go, I'm not. I say, do you ever see this person? Has it ever happened again? Has it happened since?
That's why I let my kids go have nobody else.
It's not. Like I said, this is not a fun, oh yeah, I get to keep their secrets. No, I understand as a parent, this is going to be tragic no matter when you hear it. So can I work with the kid who's just now ready to be worked on to get to them the place, because they're going to consider how you feel. And how you go through that house as a tornado and ready to fight and mad you didn't know, that is all weighing on them. And some of them take that internally. I caused this. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why this keeps happening to me. I don't know why I feel like this. I don't know why I attract this pain. You got to work through a lot to get them to the place where they can handle the parents' emotions. And so, so the fact they're willing to say it out loud is usually a good sign that we can start working on that.
Yeah.
But if I jeopardize that, like I said, there's usually layers involved with that, because that triggers so many other things that come with that kind of abuse. It triggers the way they think, it interacts, that we'll never get to work with all that because they don't trust nobody.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm the type of person, whether you a kid or whether you're an adult, if you come tell me something, and I'm gonna let you know, there's certain things. I remember in 2005, I went up to the altar. I always remember significant things, dates and times. I came up to the altar for prayer, and you were the person that prayed for me. We weren't like really good friends at the time, but I will never forget something that you said. You was like, you was like, what do you asked me something about what I need prayer for. And you said, I think, and I told you, you was like, I believe this is something that you need to talk to your leaders about. And I appreciated that. But I'm telling you right now, if you come to me, if your children come to me and tell me something, I'm gonna say, listen, I'm really glad that you told me this, but I want you to know that I believe this is something that your parents should know, and I'm going to tell them. Now, if they never come tell me nothing else, then that was just my one opportunity. But I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna tell it, and I would want you to tell me about my children, because if you did not, that would alter our friendship.
See, and I
that would alter us.
A list of people. I said, these are people I would never ask any questions. I said, you talk to them, I'm never gonna say, what did you talk about?
And see, I never went that deep, though, so I'm really going to do that.
I know they need that. Like,
yeah.
And they do.
They do.
need to be able to have
but
an
when
outlet
it comes to,
that isn't
like,
you.
What I'm understanding is when it comes to certain
I understand how you
things,
feeling.
when it comes to certain things, I went through molestation at 7. I was able to go to, I had that type of relationship where I could go tell my mother. We have a great relationship. But for those that don't, but the parent needs to know. The parent needs to know.
No, I agree. I agree.
They need to know.
But I think it's up to the kid to really be ready to tell them.
I agree.
It's not
I
that I
know you
disagree
do.
with you.
That's right, Takoya.
No, it's not that.
But I'm going to say,
Well,
It's the truth.
I love this. I love these ladies, man.
Unfortunately, this is a huge topic to tell or not to tell. But you know what? I'm going to end it like I ended the last one. Go with God and let him lead you.
And tell it.
And prayerfully, it'll work out all right. We will see you all next week from the Vantage Point. Bye.